Okay, we are in week 6 of Wills, Trusts, and Estates, and in your text we're going to be doing Chapter 5, Preparation to Draft a Will, Checklist in the Conference with the Client. This is kind of the nitty-gritty, we know now what makes a valid will, we kind of know what we need to make that valid will. Now we're going to put together checklists because I'm a big believer in checklists. Let's be honest, I like most people, go to the grocery store and I start walking through and I'm like, what was I supposed to get? And then I get home and I'm like, oh yeah, mayonnaise. I forgot I didn't have mayonnaise. So it's important to have a checklist so that you don't forget things. It also makes the client feel more in control and lets the client know that you are exploring every avenue. It gives comfort to your client, which is a big deal. So you want to make sure you're as organized as possible. It's kind of like, you know, when I used to do trial work, because I was a litigator for years. I love doing trials. And what you do when you're a litigator is you condense everything to a notebook. And then you are very organized as you go through each witness and you have your exhibits. And it's quite impressive to the jury. You know, after a trial is over, you get to ask, with the judge's permission, questions of the jury. What was important to you in this case? What did you find persuasive? What bothered you? And you ask it about, you know, what did you think of the other side? Right? What did you like about them? Because you may be able to pick up some things. I'll never forget, I was a young lawyer and I asked the jury, I had won the case, of course, and I asked to send a jury questionnaire to the jury, and I had just a list of 10 questions. You don't want to overburden anybody with a self-addressed stamped envelope. And one that I got back that I found particularly interesting was, you looked so organized, so you must have known what you were doing. The defendant had papers everywhere, was shuffling things around, was really unimpressive. We were more likely to believe you than them. Why? Just from appearances. So what's my point of telling you this story? Make sure that when you're with your client, your desk isn't a mess. Make sure that the conference room table is cleaned. And when I say clean, I don't mean doesn't have papers on it. I mean doesn't have like water rings from when the last people were in there and they put their glass on the table. Make sure it's cleaned, right? Make sure the floors are vacuumed. Make sure that you present an image that would give people confidence. And think about you. You know, would you be willing to give your time and money and your future to someone who doesn't tie their shoes or have their necktie not all the way up properly, or doesn't think enough of you to put a suit coat jacket on, or a woman who doesn't think enough to, you know, make sure her nail polish isn't chipped? Those are things that people notice. And so you want to make sure that you are presenting an image and have the substance at the same time. So what we're going to go over in this chapter is a little bit of smoke and mirrors, right? A little bit of, hey, we're really organized, you can trust us. We're not going to lose papers. We're not going to forget hearing dates. We know the law. And actually getting the substance of what you need from a client. Okay? So your book starts with your initial conference with a client. So sometimes clients are referred to you. Sometimes they see your ad on TV. Sometimes they have driven by your office and they see the sign and they figure, oh, why not? What the heck? All lawyers are the same, which is another one of those weird things. Like, you would never go to I don't know, a family practice doctor to get your tooth pulled, right? Doctors aren't all the same. Specialties are not all the same. There are lawyers out there who only do probate law. Now, like we've talked about before, you have to know all these other areas of law in order to focus on probate law, but primarily they know what they're doing when it comes to probate law. So, a client can come in, see a lawyer, and a lawyer would say, I don't really do probate law. But I have a friend who does, or I have a lawyer down the street who does, or in the same office building who does. So lawyers will refer clients to one another. You now have basically two people you have to please. If a lawyer refers a client in, you have to keep that client happy, and don't think they're not going to tell the lawyer that referred them, whether they like you or not, because it's a reflection on them. Okay? And in some areas of law, not so much in probate law, in some areas of law where a lawyer refers somebody to another attorney, they actually will share fees and responsibilities. So they get a cut of whatever the fees are. So they really want to make sure that these clients are taken care of because they have a financial stake in it. Okay? So you have to know where your client's coming from. That's the point of all of that. You have to know who they are. You have to know where they came from, who referred them. If after your initial meeting, you're going to send a letter to the referring attorney, you are going to say, thank you so much for sending Mr. and Mrs. Smith to me. We met for a long time today. They have decided to go forward with me. Thank you for your confidence in me. If there's anything I can do for you. That's what I mean. You've got two clients when someone refers you in. If someone just, looks you up on the internet or sees an ad or drives by and comes in, now you have to win that person over. Actually, more so than if somebody refers them, because clients shop. What do I mean by that? Okay, I don't know about you, but I like to do retail therapy. It's probably a problem. Anyway, I don't like to spend a lot of money though. So maybe I'll go on one website and I'll find what I'm looking for, and then I'll start looking around. Who's going to give me free shipping? How long is it going to take for this item to get to me? What's the price? Is there a warranty? Okay? What are the customer reviews? Everybody's like that, right? I just now went through my weekly ads for the grocery stores. All the grocery stores pretty much are the same, but if one has a better deal, I'm going there. I'm shopping around. So if a client just looks you up online or has, driven by you, they're shopping. You might not be number one lawyer that they saw. You might be lawyer number 3. How do you get them to stay, if in fact you want them to stay? Because the first client interview is really a chance for you to get to know each other. You might say, you know what, I'm getting a bad vibe. I don't think I want you as a client. And then you send them on their way. By the way, the best way to do that is to charge an exorbitant amount of money that nobody will pay. I did divorce law for many, many years. If a client came in and I was like, oh, this one's trouble. There is no way I want to take this case. I would charge them a $10,000 retainer. And they'd look at me and their eyes would bug out. And I'd say, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, if you come up with 10 grand, then I'll be happy to do your divorce. I didn't say to their face, I really don't like you. I think you're trouble. I made it so that they chose not to come to me because I was out of their price range. Probate lawyers will do the same thing. Right? I'd be happy to take your case. I will need a $10,000 retainer. Oh, okay. Bye. Okay? So understand, this initial client interview is important for both of you. Now, a lot of attorneys, especially in probate, will do the initial client interview with the paralegal. In other areas, the paralegal will actually do the initial interview. In probate, it's a little bit different. And again, it depends on the lawyer, depends on the office, depends on who the paralegal is, how long they have been doing this area of law. But many times it will be the paralegal and the attorney in the same meeting. The paralegal will be gathering information or making a checklist that will be the follow-up on what we need. And the lawyer will be trying to get a rapport, get a feel for whoever the client is. Okay? Sometimes it's a two-person job. Again, depends on the office, but that's my experience. Okay? So with your initial interview, you want to make sure that you have a checklist. You're not missing anything. So, okay, let's back up. Diane, you just said we're supposed to be getting to know one another. Yeah, but you don't have unlimited time. It's not like we're going on a 5-hour date, right? It is kind of a blind date, but we don't have 5 hours for this. So part of the persuasion, part of the figuring out from the attorney's perspective whether this is someone they would like to represent is in this checklist. Now, a lot of law firms will send out, prior to the initial meeting, a checklist. And then the prospective client will come in with paperwork with the checklist filled out. Okay? Otherwise, this first meeting is kind of a waste of time, other than just getting to know one another. Okay? But lots and lots, I would say the majority of law firms, when someone calls in and says, hey, I'd like to get a will, I'd like to get this all put together, the paralegal will take that call, make the appointment, or we'll take the email and then make the appointment, and then we'll send out the checklists. And there are multiple, okay? Because we know people have different categories of items that they amass during their life. We know that people have children. We know that people have complicated lives with stepchildren and, you know, nieces and nephews that they're raising. There's all kinds of family dynamics that we need to explore so that we can make sure we are doing our best for this client. So the very first part of the checklist is your family data. Just the basics, kind of like a job interview, your name, your address, your social security number, your employers, where you work, if you have any trusts, if you've ever been divorced, if you have any prior marriages. And the last thing they have on this is names and addresses of potential fiduciaries and successors. Well, what in the world does that mean? Okay, well, a fiduciary is somebody that you place a lot of trust in. The person who is going to administer your estate when you're gone, we have learned, is called an executor, right? That executor is a fiduciary. Who do you think you could trust to handle distribution of everything that you want, paying your bills? Usually it's a family member. Usually it's a family member. So that's why it's included here. If you have trusts, same kind of thing. Although we're going to talk about some different possibilities with trusts. Now, potential fiduciaries and successors. What does that mean? Well, in my personal last will and testament, my husband is named as the executor of my estate. Well, what if, God forbid, we die at the same time? Or what if, God forbid, he dies first and then I die and I haven't changed my will? Who is your next best choice? Who's the successor in case that happens? That's what you're going to want to know. And you do that with family because most of the time you trust your family. Not all the time, but most of the time. Okay? There's a checklist for family advisors. your accountant, your attorney, your physician, your religious clergyman, financial planner, stockbroker, computer consultant. First of all, why is the computer consultant on there? Who has all your passwords? Who knows how to get into your computer? By the way, you should all have an address book with every password you have. Put them in alphabetically. Well, we don't have really a use for phone books anymore, right? In the old days, you would write down, oh, Aunt Sally, her address and her phone number are, right? Now it's all on your phone. But you do have a need for the Amazon password, or for the password to get into your computer, which you would put under C for computer, right? But a lot of people, especially people who have businesses, have computer consultants because sometimes it's a bit more complicated. So all these family advisors, why do we think we need all of that? Why do we need to know all these people? Well, do we want your old tax returns? Sure. Did you have a divorce lawyer? Well, they probably have all of your paperwork for your divorce, right? Or if you have a business attorney, they're going to have all of that information. Your taxes are huge, so never, ever, ever go without having an accountant, okay? The next part of the checklist are your assets and liabilities. What do you own and what do you owe? What do you have as far as cash, stocks, bonds, real property, personal property? This sounds a lot like bankruptcy, doesn't it? Yeah. Guess what? Probate court kind of does the same thing that bankruptcy court does, especially when it comes to debts. So we have to know everything you own. Everything. Everything you owe. Do you have a mortgage? Do you have a car payment? Do you have a bill on your MasterCard, your Visa, your Discover, I guess American Express you can't, right? Do you owe your Uncle Charlie $400? Whatever it is, you need to know, okay? And then the last, excuse me, the last part of these checklists is, where's all your stuff? Where is it? Why is this a big deal? Well, if you have insurance policies, maybe the people you leave behind would like to cash them in. Where are they? If they're under your bed, maybe we should centrally locate everything. This is also part of the initial client interview. Helping your client put together all of the paperwork that you would like to leave behind that would help the people you leave behind. To make it simpler, where's the car title? Where's the deed to the house? Where is all this stuff? Now we're going to talk a little bit more about letters of instruction and putting all that stuff together, but that's what we do in that initial client interview. We've got to locate this stuff, first of all, to verify that you actually own it, and then also going forward, where we're going to put everything. We want everything centralized. Okay? Okay, so we've got all of our paperwork. It's kind of completed. Now, what are we going to do to actually draft this will? Do I have to reinvent the wheel every single time? No, you do not. However, I checked. Microsoft Word has a sample last will and testament. Do not use it. You can go to Staples or even Walmart and look at the business forms, and there'll be a whole packet. How to do your own last will and testament. Do not use those forms. Okay? You want to make sure, just like with bankruptcy court, just like with domestic relations court, you're using a software program that the probate court that you are going to be operating in uses. Now, does that mean that 30 years from now when your client is deceased, they're going to use that? No. Maybe. Who knows? But at least for right now, you got it. Because you don't know if your client after they execute their last will and testament, is going to go outside and get hit by a bus. So we operate in the present. As you update your last will and testament, you're going to update your software. You're going to update whatever the court's doing. Make sure that you can do this seamlessly. Okay? Some other little hints that your book gives you. Avoid ambiguity. There's a great example in your book. This is on page 177. Carrie's will provides: 1, give my diamond ring to my best friend Florence Williams. Number 2, give $5,000 to my faithful employee Stephen. And number 3, all my personal property I leave to my beloved son and only heir Jeremy. Well, what the heck? You already said your diamond ring and $5,000 is going to 2 other people, and now you say leave everything to my son. You should say everything except for, or everything else to my beloved son. Okay? Make sure you're clear in what you're writing. You don't need to create a problem where there isn't one. Now, quite frankly, the court would look at this and say, obviously, these 2 things were supposed to go there. The intent is there and the rest goes to the son. But son might say, hey, I really like that diamond ring. And hey, I'd like an extra $5,000. And he might decide to fight it. And then you got a problem. So be clear. Okay? Use simple language. Place small estates in joint tenancy. If me and Mr. Hetson only have this house, we're going to put that deed in joint tenancy. We're not going to worry about anything else because this is our biggest asset. And when we die, it's non-probatable. Remember we talked about that? Joint tenancy. If something is jointly held, it's by 2 people and they each own 100%. So if one dies, the remaining one still owns 100%. So probate court, see ya. Okay? So where you have just people who really all they own is a couple of cars and a house, the cars go in joint, the house goes in joint, solves a lot of problems. Okay? Make sure that you follow your state statutes. Every state's different. You have to make sure that you're following the statutes for your particular state. And only sign the originals. Don't sign the copies. It makes a difference. Okay? We're going to talk about these, including a residuary charge, choose your clause, choose your witnesses carefully. Make sure the witnesses know what's expected of them. If this thing gets contested, they're going to get a phone call. And don't add codicils. Don't make changes. Do a whole new will. Okay? Okay, that's pretty much the entire chapter. Just know that when you actually do put together the last will and testament, you're going to send a rough copy, a draft to them, to your clients to mark up, to say, I did mean that, or for them to ask questions. Okay? They always do. And if you don't give them the opportunity, they don't feel like this is really meeting their needs. So, that is my last little bit of advice for getting this whole process going. Okay? Our next chapter will talk about how you actually execute the will. You've got from the client interview to gathering the information to reviewing how you're going to do this to how it's going to look. Okay? So our next lecture will be on that. Make sure you do your discussion and your questions. And if you have any questions for me, please email, text me, call me. Let me know you need help. Thanks.